Yes. Well, hey, what is up, y'all? Man, I'm glad to be here with y'all. My name is Bailey, in case y'all didn't catch that. I feel like I know. Thank y'all. Y'all just keep that going the entire night. That'll help. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. That'll be vastly distracting. There we go. The last one. There's another one. Going once. Sold. Okay, well, like I said, I think I know a lot of y'all in the room, and I'm glad to know y'all. But if I don't know you, man, I'm excited to get to know y'all. Not just tonight, but moving forward. I want to tell y'all a little bit about myself, but I'm going to do it in a little bit of a different way. And to start, I'll tell you about my immediate family, but then I'm going to let y'all ask some questions about me. So I'm going to put like 40 seconds on the clock, and y'all are just going to shout questions at me, and what I hear, I'm going to answer. So something you want to know about me, we're just going to do it for like 40 seconds. Everyone shout at once, okay? So, but first, y'all start formulating questions like, what's my deepest, darkest secret? And just y'all shout stuff, and I'll answer what I hear. Okay, so let's go ahead and see that picture of my family. So this is my family. That's me on the right. That's me on the right. That's Stacy on the left. Or no, it's back. Okay, yeah, so that's me on the left, and that's Stacy on the right. That's my wife, Stacy, and that is our daughter, Georgia. And so Georgia, yes, aww. So Georgia is turning 1 year of age coming up in like 5 days. It's November 1st. So today's the 27th. How do y'all count that? So like, do you count today or do you start on the 28th, 27th? So like on November 1st, she's turning 1 year of age. And so we're excited about that, super blessed. And whenever Garrett said, hey, Bailey, we want to give you the opportunity to speak, he was like, how's October 27th sound? And I said, hey, that sounds great. And I went home and I was like, oh, wait, but Stacy, I'm going to have to tell Garrett we're going to do a different night because tonight is Stacy's birthday. But in being the most incredible wife ever, she's in the back, and she probably doesn't want me to point her out, but that's her. Yes. In being the most incredible wife, she said, no. You go do your thing, and I'm going to be there. So thank you, Stacy. I love you. So anyways, okay, do y'all have your questions? Do y'all have your questions? Okay, I'm going to start a timer, like 40 seconds. Y'all just shout stuff, and I'm going to answer. All right. I'm going to take a go. That was my birthday is June 17th. A favorite cereal, I think, is Lucky Charms. Marvel movie would be Iron Man. I don't like Ratatouille, if that's what you said. I don't watch Stranger Things. I like country music. My middle name is Brett. Kanye's new album's debatable. I like it, but it's not. Okay, we'll talk. Will was in my small group at Big Stuff. I'm not answering. Favorite pizza topping is cheese. More cheese and then some more cheese. Favorite restaurants on the border and time. Okay, well, I hope y'all know me in a better way now. I hope y'all really understand who I am. I hope you've just rounded me out as a person. Do y'all feel like you have? Okay, cool. This is important. Well, we're wrapping up the series. Garrett started last week, and I'm wrapping it up tonight called See No Evil. And so as we talk about see no evil, we're talking about how, man, we have injustice in our world, and we live in a broken world, but we are to not see any evil, just like the title says. Only God can redeem brokenness for his glory, and that's what we're talking about, how God can redeem our injustice in our own life and just in the world at large. And so last week, Garrett talked about identifying injustice inside of us. And today, we're talking about how when we change a world, eventually we're going to change the world. And so whenever we change a world, investing in someone, doing for one what you wish you could do for all, that whole thing, eventually we're going to change the world at large, the world around us. And so we're going to do that. I'm going to break that down in kind of two ways. I'm going to talk about influence because things influence us, like music. I heard someone ask about what kind of music I like. I'm going to get to that in a minute. And so things influence us, but we also have influence, and the way we use our influence can change worlds. It can change the world around us. It can change individuals in our lives too. And so going on that influence, what influences us, I'm going to share what influences me. So people will ask, what kind of music do I like? And I'm almost sometimes ashamed to say that I like country music because I don't like not Taylor Swift and not like, I don't know, what?
So you don't like Taylor Swift?
No, I mean, I like Taylor Swift, but not as a country artist. Okay, so y'all kind of see, I like these guys. So these guys are two guys who have influenced me. On the left, it's Aaron Watson. On the right, it's Cody Johnson. I like these guys. Yes. And they have influenced me because they are unashamed to share their faith and share their beliefs in their music, in their concerts, in their shows. And so they've influenced me in a big way. Up next, who do I have? Kanye. Yes, I heard someone ask about Kanye. Okay. So Kanye influences me to live a life where I am unashamed to admit that I don't know everything and that I'm not perfect and that my relationship with God is not perfect. And so Kanye, he exemplifies somebody who messes up, because man, Kanye's had some hard times in his life. And even in his new album, he's talking about how he was like, every time I dyed my hair, bleached my hair, he was like, that's one time that the devil tried to take me out of this world. And he's like, I'm imperfect. I do imperfect stuff and I sin and I have fallen short of the glory of God. But he's like, I'm trying to pursue God. And man, that's so cool. Like, we are imperfect, but we can continue to seek God, and God is going to redeem us for his glory. I'm going to say that a lot tonight because it's true. And then the last one, there's this guy named Bob Goff. Bob Goff, yes. So Bob Goff does a lot of things that are influential. He does a lot of stuff in, like he writes books and stuff talking about love and the way that we can be love in a hurting world, the way that we can love others better, and the way that love can just revolutionize our lives. And then he also does a lot of stuff in the world of injustice. He does all sorts of stuff across the world where he's building schools for people who don't have an opportunity to have an education. He is feeding hungry people. He is sheltering homeless people. He is just saving people who might not have a chance to know who God is. And so Bob Goff is just killing it, and he influences me in that love area where I can love people better. And so that's so cool. Those three guys are great. And while I don't always, they influence me, but I don't always interact with them on like a super personal basis. Like, those guys aren't in my life. I don't go hang out at Kanye's house and he's like, Bailey, I'm imperfect. I'm like, dude, I know you're not perfect, Kanye, but your music's cool. No, like, he doesn't influence me like that, but he does influence me from afar. But the way that people influence you up close is also super important. And so I'm going to share about a little of my story tonight. So I'm just going to continue to, I'm going to let y'all know who I am, what my story is tonight, and I really want to get to know y'all's story too. So don't ever, be shy. Feel free, come up to me and say what's up, and I'd love to do life with y'all. But so in my story, I was influenced up close. I came to Preston Trail in the 7th grade. And I've been here since then. And so in 7th grade, I started serving whenever I was about 8th grade, and there was 2 guys who invested in me and believed in me, and those gentlemen are in the room tonight, and their name is Daniel and Jacob Wiedemeyer. That's right. So yes, Daniel, DK, and Jacob. So Jacob serves in the back in our tech ministry, and then DK leads worship up here with us and gets to hang out like that. And so, but they have influenced me in such a real way in my life since I was in 8th grade. Whenever I was in 8th grade, I came to Preston Trail, moved from another city right down the road called the Colony. I moved and started coming to Preston Trail because of someone I knew. And whenever I started serving, I didn't know who God was. I didn't grow up in the church. I knew that there was a God, but I don't know if I believed in him. And I knew that church was a checklist. That was, well, not that it is, that's what I thought. I thought church was a checklist. And so that was kind of my standing on church. But whenever I started serving, those guys invited me in. They said, hey, we know that you are unchurched, but we love you anyways, and we want you to be a part of this place. We want you to be a part of what we're doing here, and we just want you to have a place to belong. They loved me. They said, hey, regardless of what you have done, regardless of where you're at, we love you. And then they also said, hey, we trust you. And they gave me ownership and helped me have purpose. I don't know if I've ever had anyone in my life until those gentlemen said, hey, we trust you, and we want you to be a leader in the tech ministry. We want you to help others. We want you to make recommendations, to make decisions, and we want you to have ownership in this place. And whenever they did that, they changed my world. They changed my world because I didn't have anyone at home. I grew up in a divorced household. I grew up my brother is 11 years older than me, and so right as I kind of reached that point of like 8th grade and I really needed someone to invest in me and believe in me, he went off to college. And for whatever reason, I felt like I couldn't trust my parents. Whenever I got my first girlfriend, I didn't even tell my mom. Whenever I was having struggles with different temptations in my life, I couldn't talk to my dad about it. And I could have, but I didn't. They weren't showing signs at times that led me to believe that I could. And that was hard on me. And so for Daniel and Jacob to invest in me and say, hey, we believe in you, we trust you, and we care about you, that changed my world, because that was the first time I had heard that. Now, changing the world, I'm gonna get back to Jacob and DK here in a minute, but I wanna talk about changing the world for a minute. Whenever we think of injustice, the big picture injustice, when we think, the definition of injustice, I'll share this. It's when something or someone is treated unfairly or receives an undeserved outcome. Garrett shared that with us last week, and world hunger and homelessness are two big injustices that we see in our world that everyone knows about, and everyone understands why that is undeserved and why that is unfair. And unfortunately, the odds are against us in the fact that could we change the world individually? Could we solve world hunger? If I want to go out tomorrow and I'm going to solve world hunger on my own, I probably can't solve world hunger on my own. But I can invite someone into my life to help me change world hunger or homelessness, and I can do little things like changing a world one day at a time. But there's also other injustices besides those. And if world hunger or homelessness, man, if that fires y'all up, that is so incredible. And there's so many different ways that you can pour into different ministries here in Frisco, here in North Texas, where you are fighting homelessness, where you are fighting world hunger, and you can do these things. But there's also injustice inside of us, like Garrett talked about last week, and there's also injustice in our everyday lives, whether it's in our schools, in our homes, on our sports fields, wherever you go, wherever your feet land, odds are there's injustice in front of you. And so world hunger and homelessness, those are two like big ones, like I said. But I wrote down some that I think, and whenever I was in school, I realized this, that you could be facing in your life, and you could see some injustices. And so there's four that I kind of thought through. One was bullying. Bullying is injustice for sure. If we look back at that definition of injustice, it's when someone or something is treated unfairly or receives an undeserved outcome. Man, does anyone deserve bullying? No way. Bullying is injustice, whether it's yourself or someone you know. Loss. If you lose a parent, if you lose a sibling, if you lose a friend. Suffering. Things like cancer or mental illness, that's injustice. That's something hard. Other hard times like divorce or abuse or neglect. Those are all injustices that, man, you might be walking through, someone you know might be walking through, or someone you don't know but you can see it in front of you is walking through an injustice like that. There's a pastor in Oklahoma, his name is Craig Groeschel. He's super ripped. I don't think I put a picture of Craig. Craig, he is super ripped. Like, he is this big guy, and his muscles are like this big, and he could do more push-ups than any of you in this room, and it makes no sense because he's a pastor and he gets up here and teaches. But he's this jack guy, and he teaches on leadership a lot. And so Craig talks about leadership and how we are all leaders, and he had this saying, I was listening to him speak this past April, I think it was. Not important, but he was talking about how we as leaders can bend the curve. Okay, everyone say bend the curve. Bend the curve. So bending the curve, what I think Craig means by this is he wants us to do the unthinkable and unbelievable. He wants to do the unthinkable and unbelievable. We need to love those in proximity to us that are suffering those types of injustice that I just talked about. And there's so many more different injustices that you could be thinking about or see in your daily lives. And during small groups today, y'all can unpack that, different injustices that you've seen. But Craig wants us to bend the curve because he believes that, you know, you might think, I can't change the world on my own, but you can. And whenever you decide that you're going to bend the curve, you're going to do the unthinkable and unbelievable, and you're going to straight up shock people and blow them away, that's whenever the enemy gets pushed to the side and God is going to start using you for his glory and purposes. And before we jump into James 2, Someone told me this a long time ago, and it's so true. It's only our God who can take a great mess and turn it into greatness. And that's so true, because whenever we have a great mess in our lives or we see it in front of someone else, we might think there's no way we can tackle that on our own. But with God behind you, and with you saying, I'm just gonna love this person where they're at, or I'm gonna help them get better, or I'm gonna pray for this person, then you are taking that great mess, you are an instrument that God is using to take that great mess and turn it into greatness. And so, man, I don't want us to miss that. Last week, Garrett talked about James, was reading from the book of James, and I'm going to continue that tonight. So we're going to start right at the top of James 2 and unpack a little bit more of that injustice in our own lives, kind of like what Garrett was speaking to, and then we'll get on to where James talks specifically about injustice. But he talks about the sin of partiality. And so as we see up there, that's James 2, 1 through 4. And so at the top of that chapter, it says that James is talking on the sin of partiality. And partiality, I looked up the definition for that. It says an unfair bias in favor of one thing or person compared with another. And partiality and injustice kind of go hand in hand in my head. I think that whenever we have partiality towards someone, unfairness or favoritism, we're having injustice in our own lives. And so James 2, 1 through 4, it says, my brothers, show no partiality as you hold the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory. For if a man wearing a gold ring and fine clothing comes into your assembly, and a poor man in shabby clothing also comes in, and if you pay attention to the one who wears the fine clothing and say, you sit here in a good place, while you say to the poor man, you stand over there, or sit down at my feet, have you not then made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? James is saying that whenever we judge a person by what's on the outside and how we perceive them, we are committing the sin of partiality and practicing injustice in our own lives. We're going to pick up in chapter 2, verse 9. It says, but if you show partiality, you're committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become guilty of all of it. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not commit murder. If you do not commit adultery, but do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law. So speak and so act as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty, for judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. That last part of that chunk of scripture right there is that verse 13, the second part of it, when he says, mercy triumphs over judgment. That's what Craig Rochelle, who I was talking about, the bend the curve guy, wants us to do. He wants us to bend the curve and say, hey, we're not going to judge somebody, but we're going to love them and believe in them and have faith in them. And we're going to prove the world wrong whenever we decide that we're going to bend the curve. Because we are going to show up and we're going to love people and not judge, but we're going to be love in this broken world. And whenever the world wants and expects us to judge somebody, and whenever we're hungry at times for likes on our Instagram pictures, or for someone to say, hey, you look good today, or something like that, whenever we're hungry for the approval of someone else, we fall away from seeking God's approval in our lives. The world, God calls us to judge, to not judge, but be love. And bringing that back into my life, man, that's exactly what Jacob and Daniel did. They didn't judge me, but like I said, they gave me a place to belong before I believed in God and before I behaved like God. Before I behaved like Christ and before I believed in who Jesus was, they gave me a place to belong. And maybe someone in your life, someone that you're coming across, needs you to give them a place to belong, something to belong to, a religion, a faith to belong to, a relationship with Jesus to have ownership in and to belong to. Maybe that's what someone needs from you. Whenever I was in middle school, my world as I knew it was crumbling, and they embraced me and loved me. Because whenever I moved here, I realized that everyone else in my new school, they had it all together and they had it figured out. And I was like, back whenever I lived in the colony, everyone knew my dirt and everyone knew what was up, but I'm new here and I can just decide who I'm gonna be. So I lied about things up and down. I was like, no, my parents aren't divorced, No, my dad's got it all together. He's not struggling. No, everything is fine in my life. And then people begin, and I told all sorts of other lies. I was like, oh yeah, we are wicked rich. I'm not poor. I'm not middle class. We're rich. We got all sorts of great things at home. You should see it. Oh, but you can't come over today and see it. Sorry, it just doesn't work out. And so it was crumbling. Man, if y'all have ever got yourself caught in a web of lies like that before, like you realize like you can only tell so many lies before they start like they're not making sense to each other anymore and they're just falling apart and people are starting to not trust anything you have to say. But I showed up in this place and those guys believed in me and they said, hey, you can drop the act. You're safe here. We have a place for you to belong. James 2:14-17 says, what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also by faith itself, it does not have works. It is dead. James is talking about how faith without works is dead. Like you can't just say, hey, we have faith, but I'm not gonna help anybody in need. And you can't just say, hey, I'm gonna help people in need, but I'm not gonna have faith. It is such a balance of the two. You really need to have a balance of the two. And whenever you just have faith in no works, this is what it sounds like. So I'm gonna re-swizzle a little bit of what James said here. Whenever you only have faith, and you see someone who is experiencing injustice, and you say, hey, I know you're hungry, and I know you're freezing, and I really hope you do find some peace. I hope you get warm, and eventually find some food. Bye. That's what you're saying whenever you have faith without works. You need to marry the two and bring them together, and you say, hey, I'm gonna pray for you because I have faith that my God will show up in your life, but I'm also gonna go buy you a sandwich. I'm also gonna do this. I'm also in, like I said, in small groups today, y'all are gonna dive into injustices that you care about and that you see in your life, and you're gonna put some tangible action steps to how we can fight this injustice. Because we don't need to settle for simple words over actions. We need to show up with our actions, and we need to show people that we love them, and we need to show people how much they matter. Like I said, today in small groups, we're gonna dive into these injustices and walk away with next steps. But if you're like me, you still might be battling thinking that you can do something like this. I struggle with doubting God in my life sometimes. It's hard to trust God sometimes. I'm gonna say that it is. Speaking right now is huge for me. I'm nervous, and I've never spoken before. And I've been praying and praying that God would speak through me tonight. And I've come to realize that God won't lead us to a situation that he isn't prepared to bring us through. And as I was nervous, and I was sitting here, and I was a few nights ago, I was nervous, and I was sitting at home prepping, and I told Stacey, I was like, Stacey, I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I don't know what I'm gonna say. I don't know if what I'm gonna say is gonna be enough. I don't know if I'm the right guy for the job. And I was doubting God right there. In classic, in Stacey nature, she pulls out her Bible and she says, but wait. And she read me a verse from Exodus, chapter 4, verse 10 through 123. That's a typo. I think it's 12. Yep, through 12, not 123. But we can read it. Y'all got time? Okay, no, we'll read through 12. So it says, so it's talking about Moses. Moses was a guy in the Old Testament, and Jesus called on him, and Jesus said, hey, Moses, you are going to bring your people, your group of friends, more or less, out of slavery. You're gonna take them, and you're gonna save them, and you're gonna lead them to a better life. And he was like, me? I'm not the guy for the job. So he says, but Moses said to the Lord, oh my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue. Then the Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. Whenever we think that we can't do it, look to God, and he will, like I said, he will lead us and prepare us to bring us through what it is that we show up for. Whenever we show up to change someone's world, he is going to bring us to that place to change someone's world. He has put you in your schools, in your families, in your relationships for a reason, because he's brought you to that, and he's going to bring you through it for his glory. If we lean into God and trust that he will use us, we will do great things. And so maybe tonight this is your thought. Maybe you don't have a relationship with God and you're looking to know who he is. Maybe it's that you don't know who God is and you need God to change your world so that then you can go and change another world. And man, that's big. I remember it was my junior year whenever I had decided to put all of my lies and my brokenness and just be who I am, and whoever's gonna accept me and love me, those are the people I need in my circle. And whenever I made that decision, it opened up a whole new world, and I saw God work in my life in different ways and in new ways and more ways than I could even imagine or ask. And so I prayed, I said, God, please show up in my life and change me from the inside out. God, I believe that you are my Lord and my Savior. And I was baptized my senior year in front of my family, in front of my friends, and it has been a pivotal moment for me. And maybe if you need to make that decision tonight, man, we encourage you and invite you to do that.